called it that because behind every successful business, every successful person is a whole heap of people, a team that people rely on and touch base with. And this is what this series is about, picking the brains of experts and utilizing their expertise, not only through this period, but in business in general. And I'm very fortunate that I have two people that I know very well. They are the co-directors of CATS Accountant, as well as the co-host of Two Drunk Accountant podcasts. These guys are also awesome table tennis players, Tim and Dan.
I appreciate you adding that last bit because it's something that a lot of people miss when they introduce us. It's how good we actually are at ping pong.
Oh, you guys are the living example that you don't need to be Asian to be good at ping pong.
That is one of the first things when I met Quang. He told me how good he was at ping pong, and then he owned up that he was just joking about it later. But yeah, no, thank you for that intro, Quang. Yeah.
Yeah, I owned up because you guys annihilated me on the table. That's why.
Yeah, you owned up after it was 21-0.
Yeah. And with the countless double faults.
Double faults.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, guys, I know I've just given everyone a quick intro here, but guys, if you could just take a moment just to, tell everyone about what you guys do, your background, and how we met each other down the track.
I think, first of all, I don't want to get too detailed about the ping pong, but I'm Tim, and I'm 2019 Player of the Year for ping pong at CATS Accountants. I'm not sure if that was officially decided, but I'll definitely claim that one. So Dan and I actually recently took over CATS Accountants as a business, so we're partners in business.
Congratulations, guys!
Thank you. And so really our philosophy with our accounting firm and the podcast is all about supporting, teaching, and growing. So it's supporting, teaching, growing our clients, our community, our team, ourselves. And so that's where the podcast fit in. We like to have a bit of fun and share our knowledge with people. So what do you think, Dan?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we've both been working together for 10 years roughly. And even before that, we actually went to high school together. So we've known each other for a long time. And so since then, we've just been slowly building up what we do, building up the business, exploring the things that we're interested in, which is helping other businesses, helping people, because we're all in this together, and we want to make sure that all the knowledge out there isn't hidden behind some special accounting wall. we want to spread it out there and give people the tools and the ability to navigate their way through.
And we met you, Quang, through BNI back in the day, which was like a networking group. And we see you all the time at all different events on the coast, like LinkedIn Local. And I think you're just such a good guy and a good person to go along with. Always having a laugh. Don't take yourself too seriously. So
thanks, Tim. Make me blush.
And you make a pretty good coffee too. I mean, that one time you made me a coffee at your house, so that was useful.
Awesome. I don't know if I shared this with you guys. So early on, I was one of the early guests on Two Drunk Accountants, and a lot of people listened to that, and almost everyone came up to me. Okay, not everyone, maybe about 20 people. Okay. Who am I kidding? Probably about 8 people came up to me and said,
I was going to say 20. It's pretty good, especially back then.
They were like, "You guys really hit the juice before you were on that episode because it sounded pretty juice." I was like, "No, that's just us."
That's it.
We can let everyone into a little secret is we do call it the Two Drunk Accountants, but rarely are we ever drunk on the podcast. It just sounds that way. Just sounds that way.
I guess we're just drunk on accounting. I was gonna say.
Oh, that's classic. I love it. Guys, I just want to just early on take this moment just to thank you guys for coming on. We're going to talk about a whole heap of different things, business in general, but also I guess business how it's been affected by COVID right now, because it's something that's worldwide. We're fortunate enough here that we're not as heavily impacted as some of the other nations in the world, but we also have some restrictions and regulations put in place to help that cause. But it's also impacting businesses without a doubt. So all over the media, they're saying there's a health impact, but there's also an economical impact. A lot of businesses are having to, one, shift the way they operate, or two, unable to shift. And they've been forced to either shut or reduce it down, scale it down so far that it's kind of non-existent. With you guys being, at the front line of what's happening, what's your take on businesses and the impact of COVID and, in general and specifically, if possible?
Yeah, I think it's a unprecedented time. I don't think there's a single business out there that hasn't been impacted in some way, be that you're a builder on a site somewhere who now has to keep only a certain amount of people on the site, or new hand washing facilities on site and things like that that you wouldn't have ever thought of before, down to, say, a restaurant that's had to completely close, and now it has to shift completely to a new business model of takeaway. So there's a lot of in between that, but there wouldn't be a single business out there that hasn't been affected by this somehow. There's also been businesses, surprisingly, that have done really well out of this. There's been some businesses who've either been able to adapt or already on that direction, and there's been opportunities for them to really kick in and have done quite well. But then a majority of the time, it's businesses have had a significant downturn of revenue. They had to shift the way they're doing it. They had to rethink the way that they're running their business. And it is a very interesting time for everybody.
I'm seeing a lot of people approach it in a pretty constructive way, though, which is good to see. I mean, obviously, in the first few weeks, or even the first week after the main shutdown that happened in Australia, there was a bit of stress and a bit of confusion as to what the future held. But I've seen over the weeks, more and more so, people getting more confident, being creative, forward thinking, and finding new ways to, I suppose, whether it be build a bridge to the other side of coronavirus, or pivot their business model and try to build something new right now that they can actually work on and survive or thrive from in the meantime. So it's been
definitely.
It's been a really interesting time, and I think if anything, I've got a lot of respect for everyone who's stayed calm and looked to the future in a positive way.
Yeah, I think you guys are right there in that when these restrictions were first put in place, it was all doom and gloom, and as we all experienced, there was fear and panic, and people going out of their mind, just panic buying is an example. But now that we've actually had time to adapt and adjust ourselves to the scenario and kind of notice that it's not as bad as what we initially thought. So things are starting we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not as or as doom and gloom as initially made out to be, because of the lack of foresight or lack of understanding of how we could navigate through this period.
I think Australia and Australian people in particular, I think just our culture has allowed us to kind of, we're always happy to be the underdog, or to just accept things how they are and find the best way through. Whereas you see in other countries, mass protests about opening the economy back up and crazy things like that. Whereas I feel as a culture, we've been able to just go, okay, this is what it is right now. Let's find the best way through it. We know there's going to be some support out there, and then back in on the other side.
Yeah, I think we're pretty lucky in Australia as well. Like we have such a good quality of living. So being stuck at home or or changing our lifestyle so that we go on more walks with the dog, or going to the beach more often. I know, Quang, you've been doing a lot of sup boarding, a bit of stand-up paddle boarding.
Definitely. And I'm sorry, I've seen a sea turtle recently, so I've seen more wildlife out on the water. Bragging to these boys all the time about that.
So yeah, I mean, I think we're so lucky in that we can get out in nature and stay positive. And that was one of my first points I really wanted to, I suppose, share with people is, I think, something constructive they can do straight away. And this is really what we focus on with clients when we're doing planning for their business, is find something personal that you can set a goal for, or find something personal that you can set a direction for, which will have a positive impact on your energy, on your emotions, but also perhaps it might even relate to something to do with the business. It might give you work-life balance, or it might relate back to a personal budget even. Set a personal budget and a savings goal on your spendings that you might be having and you need to cut back on. So for me personally, I've set sights on trying to get fitter and do some running, which has been positive. Awesome. And I'm struggling massively, but trying to build up. I want to try and run 40 kilometers at some point over the next 6 months. So
not at the same time. Just like
not at once. Yeah, maybe like 2K chunks.
Yeah, 2K chunks would be fine. Yeah,
I mean over the next 6 months. So
yeah.
What makes it worse is we've got someone that works with us who runs marathons fairly regularly, and we say things like, "Oh, we went for a great 4K run today. Like I'm improving, I'm getting better." And he said, "Oh, I went for a small run. Oh, how far did you go? Oh, just a quick 10. Just a quick 10 this morning. Not much. I'll probably do 20 over the weekend."
Yeah. You need to just flog him in table tennis. Bring him back.
Yeah, we do. It makes us feel a bit better.
Actually, he won the last comp in the office too, so that was upsetting.
And I think it's a valid point that you guys talked about there, is readjusting your own personal goals as well, because when you start those personal goals, you bring that confidence and that self-belief back into yourself. And then naturally that will have a flow-on effect in your business as well, because there's no two versions of you. You're still the same person. And it gives you that confidence to perhaps jump on an idea, or perhaps to, the key word I've been hearing everywhere is to pivot and take that course of action that you need. And the best example I can think of is I live about 2 minutes drive away from a gin distillery. Yeah.
Yes. I think I know the one as well.
Definitely. But they're kind of, obviously all business. They're a hospitality, selling alcohol and whatnot. They've got a cafe in there, but they've definitely had to adapt. So another source of income that they probably wouldn't have thought of previously is now they're producing alcohol to sell to pharmacies to make hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that happening right now, and I think businesses, and it's probably a combination of we're more advanced, we know more, but also it's we have stronger support networks these days as well. To a lot of businesses are being able to take that step and transition into the next phase or add on another branch. Have you guys noticed that? Have you guys seen some examples of that in your line of work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most common ones that we've seen would be, say, a restaurant that never used to do takeaway now does takeaway and has the facilities to be able to do it. They've signed up to things like Menulog or those kind of apps that allow them to get more regular orders, change their menu up. And so these might have been restaurants that have never done takeaway in the past. And then also the other main example that I've seen a bunch of times would be gyms. We've got a few gym clients who used to have, daily classes on all day. Now they've been able to pivot and do an all online class, and they do those several times a day, keeping the memberships. There might be different prices, but they're offering a different service that they would have never thought about before. And when all this is over, they could continue to offer. They have those systems in place now, and they've got an alternate source of revenue.
Yeah, that is the exciting thing, and that's where like that growth mindset or the positive thinking comes into it, because you're actually creating a better future for yourself potentially over this time, whilst being supported by some government stimulus that might be available to you that you could be accessing. So it's actually giving you time to rethink, do the planning that you always wanted to do, or create the efficiencies or the new products or services which you were interested in doing. So I think you hit on a few things there, Quang, which are really vital. It's knowing yourself and knowing why you're in business, because that's really going to drive what's going to satisfy you and what's going to fulfill you over the next 6, 12, 24 months, whatever it may be. And that's really important. But then it's also knowing your community that you're a part of, because I think I've seen, like, especially with restaurants, cafes, the gyms, all of those people, if they have a community and a way to communicate with that community, whether it be social media or an app or whatever it might be, they're going to be more successful at this time, because they'll be able to lean on that community for support and work together through it, and find a modification of their service or product, whatever it was, to keep things going, which is what their customers want too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good, Dan.
I was going to say, I think something that Tim just alluded to before as well is something when we do business plans with clients, we often start with that why they're in business themselves, and that's something that during a time like this might get very easily forgotten. You know, there'd be a lot of people sitting there who might be stressed about where that income's coming from. They might be stressed about the changes that they're making in their business. And reflecting or thinking back onto why you started this in the beginning is going to help motivate you to push to that next step and to make the changes that need to be made.
Sure.
Oh, most definitely. And I was just going to add to that. It's, people, for those who are of the, we talk about the mindset of the closed and scarcity mindset, they're probably thinking, oh man, it's going to force me, I'm going to go bankrupt, it's going to force me to shut. But if you're on the other side of that, and it's not just mindset, you have to action it as well. But forced innovation, this is forced innovation. We have to be creative. We have to think of ways to survive, to continue to make an income. And the gym example, you could now, because they probably were targeting a local market, but now because they've got these other avenues or other platforms to do what they do, they've actually opened up to a whole new market that could potentially be international. Which is phenomenal.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely. If they're able to translate the community that Tim was talking about that they've been able to develop locally into an online platform, your potential clients go from a few suburbs around to an entire country or several countries.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I mean, the Australian dollar is so weak right now. So exporting is a good option. If you have a service or a product you can export.
Yeah.
There's government grants around
there's a lot of grants.
Those exports as well.
Yeah, I was even looking at the Queensland state government grants today for a client we have in Queensland. And in New South Wales, there's the $10,000 just grant for people who have been severely affected. In Queensland, there's nothing like that, but there is a $5,000 to $50,000 grant for people in specific industries. I think it's food and fishing. I can't think of the third one, but who, if they're looking to export to China, they can get a grant from the government to change their business model and head in that direction. So there's some really interesting things out there and opportunities if you're looking for them.
Yeah, and speaking of the government grants and all the stimulus packages that they're putting out towards us for business owners and supporting them to ensure that the economy keeps moving. I guess with so many out there, I guess being in New South Wales, let's talk about the New South Wales one, I guess, and if you can touch base on some other ones, great. But what are the key ones that, people, we hear about the JobKeeper, but, is that it? Are there any more? What are their purposes? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's so many of them out there, and the hardest part for us, let alone the small businesses out there, has been keeping up to date and keeping on top of all the different ones that are out there, because Obviously,
Yeah.
there's the federal ones, which are the main ones we hear about, the JobKeeper, the Cashflow Boost, and I'll chat about them in a second. But also, as Tim said before, each state has different ones. So if you're a business in New South Wales versus a business in Queensland, then there could be very different grants and very different support out there for you. So starting maybe at the federal level, you mentioned the JobKeeper. That's the one that most people seem to be aware of and looking to get. That's essentially just a wage subsidy for most of your employees, as long as they're full-time, part-time, or a casual for more than 12 months, essentially, with you. And as long as your income has reduced by 30%. Now, there's a few different tests that I won't specifically go into here, depending on how long you've been in business and if your business was the same over the years. But essentially, if your income is reduced by 30%, you can be eligible for this. And for all eligible employees, you'll get a wage subsidy of $1,500 a fortnight, paid at basically the end of each month. So that's the main one that people hear about and people trying to go for.
And that's been really welcomed and received well by people who have been badly affected by coronavirus. So the cafes, gyms, restaurants, even the clubs, pubs, because and retail too. So what it's enabled them to do is to go to some of their staff who they may have stood down or let go of or stopped giving shifts to, and it's allowed them to say, "Hey, guys, come back. We'll get you to do some work." And if I was in their position right now, I'd be thinking so strategically about what they could be working on if they're not busy, to be growing and positioning my business to grow and launch in 6, 12, 18 months time when things are starting to open up and release after coronavirus. So I think that's a really exciting option for people.
Yeah, and I think we can chat in a little bit about the opportunities that people have right now to really look at the assets they have and what to get from it. But that's definitely an opportunity to look at your staff, and right now they might not be able to pour a beer, but what else could they be doing for you?
Yeah. That's it.
100%. As most businesses, the staff, the wages, the salaries are the highest proportion of resources allocated. So just because they're not operating how they would normally be in a normal situation, it doesn't mean you still can't utilize their expertise and experience in some other capacity, because we're not just good at pouring beers. Period. We're good at other things as well. We just got to have that right conversation to tap into
drinking. I'm good at drinking them too. So
and smashing the glasses? No.
Only when he loses ping pong.
Which is never.
I've seen that angry.
So that's the JobKeeper is the main one that people have been speaking about. But a long forgotten stimulus package that was announced a whopping week and a half or so before the JobKeeper was the Cashflow Boost, and this is something that's happening right now. So essentially, this is in a very short way of saying it, you don't have to pay the tax withheld from your wages for employees, in particular limits between January and June, and then you get that again in the next 3 months. Whatever benefit you receive again. So that's a pretty big cash flow saving for people who may withhold a lot of tax from wages, and it's between $10,000 and $50,000 per period. So in that first 6 month period, it's $50,000. In the next several month period, it's another $50,000 if you received that total amount.
Maximum. Yeah. So, the big thing about that one is it doesn't have to be any decline for your business to receive that one. You just need to be paying wages to employees. You need to have employees in your business.
And that needed to be before March, before all these stimulus packages and things were announced. You needed to have that business up and running and employing those people.
So it's definitely worthwhile speaking to obviously you guys, but I just want people to touch base with their accountants to get the most relevant information, because a lot of people see accountants as and my friend Kang, we spoke about it in one of the early episodes, that people just shop around for accountants purely based on money, whereas an accountant, if you have the right one and develop the right relationship, can be one of your most valuable assets in helping you understand your numbers and your finances and other things like these stimulus packages, and making sure that they fit you and you can access them if required.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if you're not valuing your accountant right now, then you never will. And I think this is something that there's a lot of different types of accountants out there. There's the accountants who are just looking at your tax. They're trying to keep their prices low, and they're going to attract the people who are just shopping around for the cheapest price. And more often than not, you'll get a business like ours, though, who we're really looking for that relationship with our clients. We want to be a strategic part of their business, not just someone you see once a year to get your tax return done. We want to be there for the big decisions you make. We want to provide you with the tools and the help and the support to do it. So, if you are just shopping for that cheapest price, then you really are missing out.
Yeah, definitely. And as we said, like, finances are a key component of business. There's no doubt about that. But to know if you're eligible to have access to these packages or some other sort of stimulus package, you have to know your numbers. And it's rightly or wrongly, some business owners kind of shy away from it because they think it's numbers. As long as I've got more money coming in, that's all that matters. Whereas I'm sure you guys do the same. When I work with my clients, we do a stock take of what their numbers are looking like, what expenses are going, where they are going. Is there something that you can suggest to help them, I guess, overcome that, or maybe make it a bit simpler so they know where to start in regards to looking at numbers?
I think it comes down to me having a really good source of information. So if you're coming from a place of messy numbers, you don't get to actually know what your numbers are for 3 months after it happened. 3, I mean, that's actually pretty quick in old school accounting. But these days you want to know within a week after the end of the month how you did in that month, and you want to be able to rely upon that information. Knowing that certain things are in the right place, that it's tidy, and then you can move through and you can use that to make decisions. You can base that, and you can make a cash flow forecast from that. You can find levers to pull that will improve that. So Dan and I often refer to the 7 ways you can make your business grow. So you can look at like average transaction value or transaction frequency. How many leads are you getting? Are you converting those leads? But then there's things like margin and your fixed overheads as well, which people always overlook. That's a way to grow your business. If you just work on your margins and increase your gross profit on every sale, that's really going to grow your business. So I think that's when in terms of speaking in plain English for people who don't really know what pivoting your business model is or shifting your business model, to make it really simple, it's looking at your margins and looking at your fixed overheads. That is the first way that you can try to figure out how am I going to pivot my business model.
Absolutely.
And so some of the government stimulus is around that too. I mean, the rent relief is an example of that. That's obviously another big cost. The JobKeeper is an example of that. That's a huge cost for most businesses. So just there, you've got a large portion of your fixed overheads in your business model are now reduced. So what can you do in terms of your margin or your sales? Well, you could potentially look at having a more competitive price. You could experiment with some new products and really deliver them at a competitive price or a loss leader. Something to get people through the door and get them excited about your product or service again. There's so many ways that you could spin it, but it gives you flexibility.
I think Tim hit the nail on the head there, just about the first thing you should be looking at. What are those fixed costs? What are those unavoidable costs that if you don't make a single dollar of sales, you're still going to have to pay? And as Tim said, a lot of those government incentives are about reducing that. But another piece of advice that I like to give is when you're first looking at those at the numbers that you're printing out from whatever your accounting software are, A lot of people get lost in how it looks or how it's written or what it's.
Yes.
Don't have to have that. I know people say that I'm in a business, I need to print my profit and loss and my statement of financial position and all these things. And you think, no, just call it whatever you want, and you can structure it however you want it. Whatever gives you the most understandable information, that's how you should have it. So if you want to call it my money in report, or you want to call it my, how well did I do report, and with some funny names as categories and just plonk things where they make sense to you, that's fine. Do that. You don't need to pretend like you're being professional. Just do it the way that works for you.
I agree.
100%.
I think we did an episode on the Two Drunk Accountants podcast, which was around reporting. And in Xero, there's a really cool custom reporting tool. And so you could make your profit and loss. You can summarize things where you don't need to see 30 accounts. You can just put it into one group. You can call it whatever you want. And so you can open that up and see the information exactly how you want to see it. It could just be your sales, gross profit margin, 2 lines, like the 3 big overheads that you have, your wages, your rent, and whatever else, just miscellaneous. And that's going to give you straight away your information that you need to see. So as long as you can rely on it and it's timely, that's beautiful.
Oh, 100%. And speaking from my own experience, I know for me, my business actually started to gain traction, and I started to know what course of action I needed to do once I made the effort to understand what my expenses were, and starting to use that information to drive where to next. So if I know that I needed extra X amount to cover my expenses, I would have to make X amount more phone calls. I would have to have more coffees. I would have to get on social, spend more on my marketing, and that data allows you to make an informed decision, which is really important.
I like it. What you're talking about there is giving meaning to the numbers. And so coming back to what we were talking about before, if you're setting personal goals, there could be a personal goal around what you need to survive on, your income. Then that can relate to a business goal, which can then flow through to targets, goals, actions that you need to do. That when you look at your profit and loss, it now goes from a sheet of paper with numbers on it, where you're like, well, maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, to I know what I need to be hitting. And this is telling me I either am or I'm not. And so I need to go do something with this.
Another good way to look at it is something that we often do is you do what's called a bottom-up budget. Start from the result that you want and work your way back to what the numbers look like from there. So if we rather, most people look at their profit and loss and they say, here's my sales, how did I do? And then they might look their way through here's my gross profit, here's my fixed costs, and there's my net profit. And they don't really pay much attention to it. But what we like to do is start with what you want. And that might be, all right, I need to make 50 grand this month. So you start at 50 grand. You know what your fixed costs are because we've spoken about them already. Just add them to 50 grand. So suddenly you know what your gross profit needs to be. You know what your gross profit percentage is, and then you can work your way to your sales. And then you're like, okay, well, I now have a sales target based on my actual numbers and based on what I want. Now let's actions to get from where we are to what that looks like. And
generally, when we're sitting with a client looking at that, they know if that's realistic or not, that sales target. So that's a really useful way of looking at it. You're right, Dan.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, guys. That's really awesome. Guys, do you mind if I share something? This is just a simple tool that I use with my clients.
Go for it.
And it's all about simplifying things because, as I said before, people get scared around numbers. So I have this really simple tool. First of all, what reports are you generating? Because some people don't even generate reports, or they're not even sure what reports do what. So then from there, we look at how are you reviewing these reports, and how often are you reviewing them? And then, as you said before, making meaning. So if you see a report and there are some numbers of concern, actually take action, And then the last one is just tracking your expenses, your fixed expenses. And it's just something magical about writing it down. You know, it just makes it so much clearer rather than being all jumbled up in your head. So, you know, we have fixed and variable, and it's something so simple. Just having a list of what you're spending your money on will help give you that clarity on what you need to do moving forward.
Yeah, and
for
as
sure.
Chip was referring to before, the 7 ways to grow. Well, one of those 7 ways is to reduce fixed costs. So if you know what they are, you can set a target. It's like, all right, well, I know this year I want to reduce my fixed costs by 5%. That's a goal of mine. So let's have a look at how we do that. You know what those items are. You can change insurance companies. You can renegotiate some of those other costs that you can bring down. So yeah, knowing them really does help, because it's basically that's the cost you need to cover with all the rest.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
They're good questions.
I guess in this time with COVID, because we don't know how long it's going to last or how long these enforced restrictions and regulations are going to be put in place, and you know, whether some businesses will have to stay takeaway for how long, we don't know. What are the must-dos for businesses out there in regards to looking after their finances or understanding them so that they can either, you know, use it to either survive this period or, as we talked about before, gearing up to take advantage of the opportunities that will arise when we come out the other end of this.
Tim?
You go, Dan? I'll go. I think that's a really good question. I think it depends what situation you're in. So if you're in a difficult situation, then you've probably gone through a bit of a shock and you've probably done a bit of scrambling. So right now, you know, it's never too late to start looking at your information and to start setting some targets, making your information relevant to decisions that you actually make in your day-to-day life and business life. But I think one of the key things that you should start to work on is a cash flow forecast with multiple scenarios. So, so it doesn't have to be complex. So we have several different Excel spreadsheets which we use. We've previously subscribed to an online cash flow tool. There's many ways you can do it. You could even, just like you did before, just write it on paper if that's the way you prefer. But I prefer spreadsheets and auto sum.
You wouldn't be an accountant if you wouldn't like spreadsheets.
But I think cash flow planning is number one. I think understanding the equation that is your business, so that's your margin and your fixed costs, is another thing to do, because that's going to give you the tools to start to replan and stay agile and flexible as things change. So you might want to look at, after 6 or plus months ahead, if the stimulus packages just stop, if there's no more JobKeeper, if there's no more cash flow boost, then what do you need to grow your business to in these next 6 months to then sustain the business as it is now when you lose that support? That's something I'd be thinking about if I was in that situation and I was struggling right now. But even businesses that aren't feeling the pinch right now, I think you should probably be taking a lesson from what everyone else has really gone through the pain of, is getting very familiar with your numbers, familiar with your business model, and doing some planning of your own in case your revenue were to fall as well over the next 6 to 12 months.
I think the key word there is uncertainty at the moment. A lot of people, you know, we can't predict what the next month's going to look like. I mean, if you asked us all 3 months ago, what would business be like in April, we'd probably be like, fine. I imagine it'll just be the same as it always.
Would it be any different?
So, and planning that cash flow is really hard to do when there is so much uncertainty. So as Tim was saying, having different scenarios is the key. And it might be as simple as saying, all right, well, let's make one cash flow for worst case, one cash flow for best case, and one cash flow for a middle ground, somewhere in between. And then having a look at your fixed costs, having a look at the support you can receive in each category, having a look at what you think your sales might be, you're going to have a result, and you're going to be able to then make actions from that. So in your worst case, it might be, all right, well, I'm going to be in the hole 30 grand of cash in the next 3 months in this worst case scenario. How do I plug that hole? What costs can I lay? Maybe bank finance. There's the government have announced some additional support for small business lending. So maybe I can get a small overdraft to cover me off that period. And then predicting into the future, okay, well, let's say things improve, am I able to then pay that back? So it's having those several scenarios there that are based on all the different situations. That means whatever does come to pass, you then have a list of actions for that scenario already planned in advance, ready to go.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the worst thing you could do is just nothing, really.
Yeah.
I think you need to think, you just need to think, what are some scenarios that could be ahead for my business? And you'll be the best person to answer those questions because you're an expert in your industry and what you do.
Yes.
So you'll understand the inherent risks that could be lying ahead. And so I think, if you take the time and just think about it and do some scenarios, what it'll actually also start to do is when you look at your cash flow, you find other ways to improve things. So a big one for a lot of people is their debtors or their trade accounts receivable. So that's something that people over time may have been slack on. And right now, it could be haunting them a little bit. It could be keeping them awake at night if they have a lot of money owed to them.
Yeah.
And there's uncertainty about that money being paid to them. So I think it's time to start tightening up on those processes.
It could be you're currently giving 30 days creditor terms for all your invoices. So you drop that down to 1 week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You hold 2 months worth of stock and you're like, okay, well, maybe I can shorten that a fair bit, and you stop ordering stock. A lot of those changes and actions you can take based on doing that cash flow projection, as Tim said. It also gives you the ability to then, once you've done that, think about what else can I be doing? So I've done this. I've sorted out the normal cash flow issues, but what else could my business be doing in this time? As we were talking about earlier, doing online things, doing, what you need, whatever you need to be doing, takeaway. What steps do I need to take to get from where I am now to where I am able to do that? It might be, all right, I need to sign up for these 4 delivery apps. I need to change my menu and design it. I need to create some social media presence. So you set actions for those things. And then you do another cash flow. All right, well, based on that, how much do I think I'm going to sell? What is that going to look like? Am I still in the hole? It's planning in advance is the main thing you can be doing.
And I think planning comes down to also, it's just as we've alluded to before, it's the mindset. It's not that, just because I'm changing my plans, it doesn't mean I'm a failure. It means I'm prepared to do what it takes to not only survive, but to flourish as well. And that's that's the shift that some business owners have to make, that you're not a failure. I know you put your heart and soul into building it up to where it is, but this is just another course of action. It's just another page, another door opening that it could potentially lead to even more, I guess we're in business, more lucrative possibility or future that you probably hadn't envisioned if you didn't, because of this whole scenario.
Exactly right. Yeah,
absolutely.
Especially if you start with your personal situation and know what's driving you and know what's going to fulfill you, then you might even come out of this happier and more fulfilled. I know I'm doing more running than I used to do, so that's a positive.
For Tim, running equates to happiness.
When I'm not running, I'm on the phone to my clients about JobKeeper, and then when I'm not on the phone to my clients about JobKeeper, I'm running. It's awesome. It's the best.
Life's so simple now.
Join those things up, Tim.
Could do them at the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Guys, look, I think we've covered a whole heap of things. I'm sure there's something or one thing that so many people could take away from our chat here. If they wanted to touch base or just ask you guys a question, or even to listen to the podcast, what's the best means of contact? How can they reach you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So on the podcast side of things, you can subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all the places. It's 2 Drunk Accountants, and we're on all the apps. But you can also follow us on social media. We're at 2 Drunk Accountants on Instagram and on Facebook, at 2 Drunk Podcast on Twitter. We're on LinkedIn. You can search us. Tim and I individually both also on LinkedIn. So that's Dan Osborne, Tim Garth. And also CATS Accountants, our accounting firm. You can Google us, CATS Accountants, or you can also find us on any of those social medias.
Yeah, or you could send us. You can also send us an email.
Yeah.
So Dan is DAN at catax.com.au, and I'm Tim at catax.com.au. So,
Very difficult names. Very difficult.
Yeah.
And Cat's account is named that way because Tim has a fetish for big cats.
Yeah, it's Tim Exotic at catax.com.
That's the side business. That's his pivot
Yeah.
business.
That is so funny. We
Yeah.
should try and make some sort of meme and get Joe Exotic in front of our brand. That'd be brilliant.
We just need a rival accounting firm to be Carol Baskin.
Yeah.
There you go. Then we'll
Hey,
make a documentary and we'll all retire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey Dan, you're a polygamist as well, isn't that? That's a funny turn of events.
Tim, you've just been promoted to Carol Baskin.
Yeah. And guys, as always, it's always been fun. I love chatting to you guys. Guys, really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the beautiful sunshine. We will speak soon.
Thanks for the
Thanks for
chat.
that.
Calculator.
Calculator.